We return once again to Middle-earth for the first time since the third Hobbit movie, because there's been nothing else that has come out since then. The Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim is the newest anime Lord of the Rings movie, and was made to fulfill one goal: to ensure that New Line didn't lose rights to the property. But in actuality, the story follows King Helm, current king of Rohan, and our main character Hera, who is the daughter of the king, and how she's set to marry the son of another house. But of course, Hera, being the free-spirited, loving gal that she is, doesn't want to be tied down by no man. So she refuses the wedding, and then the fathers of the two houses duke it out, and Helm kills the other house's father in a single blow, earning Helm the nickname Hammerhand. And then the son of Lord Freka vows revenge. And that is our plot. Lord of the Rings is not something I talk about a whole lot in my videos, just, of course, mainly at the end of the day, I'm a Star Wars kid, I guess. Lord of the Rings obviously holds a very, very strong place in my heart. One of my favorite movies of all time. Movie singular, because Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, it's all one movie, just 12 hours long. And while say what you want about the Hobbit movies, you know, they came out in a prime age range for me, and I enjoyed them from what they were at the time. And even now, I still find some enjoyment in parts of the Hobbit movies. And I've made my opinions known about other Lord of the Rings things that have come out. When I heard this film was coming out, and heard specifically that it was going to be anime, directed by Kenji Kamiyama, who I know him from Ghost in the Shell fame, having not watched Ghost in the Shell, but I knew the name. I was like, all right, Star Wars crossed over into the anime sphere, you know, doing Visions. I was like, all right, another huge live action property that's crossing over in anime, my forte. And then as that first trailer came out, I was like, you know what, I'm hyped, it looks good, I'm down. And I finally went and saw it in theaters, because I was like, you know what, I haven't seen any movies in theaters lately just because I don't give a fuck, but this is something I do care about. Went and saw it, and well, I will say, I don't know what I necessarily was expecting from this movie. I mean, you know what, Lord of the Rings, it's been a while since we've had just that classic feeling, just, you know, the medieval style, but just like with these drama with good characters set in this fantastical world. I will say, this movie very much establishes, it's just like, this is Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. The movie is narrated by Eowyn, and I guess I'll get praises out of the way just because I feel like I have less to praise about the movie than other aspects of it, but naturally, the visuals in it were stunning. At the very least, it looked like Lord of the Rings. At least with a lot of the landscapes and everything, of course, set pieces, you know, when we go to Rohan and even later when we go to Helm's Deep, it's those very familiar set pieces. The music was done by Stephen Gallagher, and there were some motifs, of course, that were borrowed from Howard Shore's original score, which that's what the movie opens with the that theme is used a good amount over the course of the movie. Overall, I'm like, why didn't we just use Howard Shore's score? But, you know, there was some fun twists on the music. Obviously, was not as memorable as Howard Shore's score. It at least felt like it belonged. Other praises, the voice acting was way too good for what this was. I'm actually really curious to see the Japanese dub of this. The voice actors in it, who I know a lot of them are like actual actors. The performance wasn't necessarily matching the animation a lot of the times, but I'll get more into that in a second. But yeah, Brian Cox as Helm Hammerhand, Guy Wise as Hera, Luke Pasqualino as Wolf, and of course Miranda Otto as Eowyn returning to do the voice for that was perfect. As well as some other voices that returned, which we'll talk about later, more of a spoiler section. Of course, this being a Lord of the Rings story, there's of course going to be a lot of those big scale battles, and while there was that, I guess this can sort of now bridge into my negatives about the movie. For this being an anime movie with arguably one of the biggest studios and properties backing it, I feel like it could have looked better. The animation a lot of the times, like, it was fine, it was good, but honestly there was very few times throughout the movie where I was just like, ooh, that was a really good piece of animation. Like, it had some moments, like some good tracking shots, and what I could tell was also maybe some rotoscoping with some movement, but other than that, and that's I guess what I'll get with my biggest gripe of the movie, is that it really does feel like something that was almost kind of speedily slapped together. I mean, obviously this has been in the work for over 3 years from what I'm reading here. The film was announced back in June of 2021, so you know, it's been in the works for a while, but yet it really does feel like something that was made solely just so that a studio could keep the rights to it. Though obviously it feeds a lot from some appendices from J.R. Tolkien's works, obviously, with Lord of the Rings. As I've like stewed on as I was watching it, it really felt more like a Studio Ghibli film in that sense, where it's just like those classic feelings of just like, oh yeah, coming of age, you know, these stories and whatnot that we've already experienced in Lord of the Rings and experienced better in Lord of the Rings. It's just mainly a lot with the main character of Hera. We've had Eowyn And we've had Arwen. And even here, I'm reading in like some of the voice cast stuff. The voice actress of Hera said that the character is closer to the female heroes from Hayao Miyazaki's anime films, rather than Eowyn or Arwen. Those characters are fully formed women, and Wiza said that Hera was a rebellious and complicated, which is, I don't want to say Mary Sue, but as I am now refreshing myself on the correct definition of what a Mary Sue is, young women who are extremely attractive, physically strong, intelligent, and morally perfect. They are often talented at everything and are very desirable romantically or sexually. Hera definitely had some flaws, obviously. Like, she wasn't a perfect character, but she loses a lot. She loses her entire family over the course of this film. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like her character really changes all that much by the end. I feel like she starts and ends in the exact same, I mean, she literally does start and end in the exact same place. And the main antagonist of Wolf just seemed like that upstart kid who vows revenge and then is so headstrong in getting that even though there's wiser people telling him to not do that. Just reading these like quotes here, just like, unlike with previous antagonists in the franchise, Wolf is just a human rather than a wizard or a dark lord, which makes him more interesting and dangerous. You know who else was just a human rather than a dark lord? I don't know, Denethor, Grima Wormtongue. Those are characters who I felt were much more interesting than Wolf. Like, I got where he was coming from, but there came a point where it's just like, dude just kept going for seemingly no reason other than his own pride. For a series like Lord of the Rings, where it's like their movies are very long, but yet they're packed with so much and they're so rich that like 4 hours feels like a well-paced 2-hour movie. It flies by so fast. Which this was a 2-hour movie, and goddamn did it kind of feel like it a lot of the time. Ironically, I could have gone for it being like a simple 90-minute movie. But I get it, like this was a movie that was fully introducing this house, these characters. It started us in the middle of a conflict, and then we just kept going from that. It just sucks because I was really looking forward to this movie, and while like being in the theater watching it, I enjoyed it. It's just now being here after seeing it, it's hard to recommend it. Like, I made a post on one of my other medias saying just like, if you're a fan of either Lord of the Rings or even like Studio Ghibli films, I think you'd enjoy it. Honestly, I think if you're less of a fan of Lord of the Rings and more of just like into anime films like Studio Ghibli and all that stuff, I think you'd enjoy it more than if you were a Lord of the Rings fan. That's some stuff I've seen just like, this could have been set in any other medieval fantasy world and it would be the same. Like, you know, just the fact that it has the Lord of the Rings branding on it. You go to areas from Lord of the Rings and there's certain characters and events that are mentioned where it's just like, oh yeah, this is Lord of the Rings. And just my final, I guess, complaint about it is just, which I kind of mentioned earlier, it's just the animation, or mainly lack thereof, and the faces did not match the amazing performances that the voice actors were giving. I closed my eyes sometimes, like as they were speaking, I'm just like, I could see this in live action. And weirdly, I feel like this movie maybe would have worked better in live action. As weird as that is to say, you know, I mean, I'm consistent, if nothing else. Like I've always said, just like stuff that's gone from animation to live action, rarely, if not, it never works because you lose like 90% of the magic that makes that thing so good. But there has been times where they go from live action to animation. I'd say it arguably works better. Case in point, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Whereas with this, I don't know. I feel like what makes Lord of the Rings really special is the fact that it is in live action, that they were able to pull such a feat of an epic like that off, and you can see it and it's real. Ironically, with this being an animation, especially in an anime style, ironically, I think the magic is lost a bit. Chalk it up to the voice actors honestly being too good at their job, to where like these animated characters are not selling the great performances that they're giving. Icing on top though, Christopher Lee returns as Saruman after having been dead for 9 years. That caught me off guard. I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, oh yeah, nostalgia. It just really caught me off how they did it. My initial thing was just like, there's no way they AI'd his voice. I mean, if they did, that would cause some shit, and justifiably. But thankfully, it was just, oh, they got some archival recordings and did that, which was cool. And, you know, it obviously seeds into, obviously, Saruman being an advisor for Rohan, which obviously seeds into the Two Towers when we get to that story later. The thing that annoyed me, though, was at the very end, Hera's just like, oh, there's a wizard out there, goes by many names, wants to know about the orcs we saw in the rings. As soon as she said that, it's like, yeah, I got it. She's talking about Gandalf. And then she even has the letter that has the fork thing on it. And I was like, all right, yeah. That's another thing. It's like, yep, all right, that's Gandalf. I got it. But then she's just like, oh, what's his name? It's Gandalf. I got that. I think anybody, even a kid, would get that. Even just from there's a wizard out there asking about why orcs are interested in rings and all that. It's like, you can understand. Chances are, if there's a wizard being mentioned, you get that. You don't need to hold your hand here at the end, but whatever. The other big thing about this movie that it's consistently talked about is just how the fuck Helm Hammerhand, in like the middle of the movie, it's like, oh, he's grieving because his sons have died, and then all of a sudden he just disappears, and it's like, oh, Helm Hammerhand is killing all the soldiers out there. He's the Wraith. So you think like, oh, it's, I don't know, it's something, it's a troll, which you see a troll later, but then it's like, nope, bro just shows up barehanded in the blistering cold and is beating the fuck out of people, and it's not explained at all. I mean, it's Lord of the Rings, it's a fantasy story, so it's like there's that element of magic, obviously, so you can infer that, but just with this, I don't know, there was nothing seeded prior to that, in which is like, oh, Helm has like some demon power or whatever in which he's able to do this. He's just fueled by rage. I mean, you see like his eyes like glow a little bit, but it's just one of those ones where they threw it in. I'm sure that was probably a thing in like the appendices where it's like mentioned that like, oh, Helm, he stood tall to the very end, you know, fucking white beard in one piece, just like he didn't bend the knee all the way to his death. I don't know, this movie, I mean, I was excited to see it, and I didn't really think much about it going into it. I mean, it came up fast. This week it was just like, oh yeah, shit, that movie's coming out, I gotta go see it. You know, it was fun going to see it in theaters. It's just sad because I doubt this movie is gonna make its budget back, because already looking at it, it's like currently it's grossing 10.3 million and the movie had a budget of 30 million. So I guess Amazon or whoever owns the rights to it right now for streaming, maybe they can make some money back there. But one, it's anime, so I already know people are gonna brush it off, and plus like theaters and going to see stuff in theaters, it's not doing that well anyway. So all in all, I give War of the Rohirrim a solid 6 out of 10. I say solid, but you know, if you like fantasy movies, again, I would recommend it more for people honestly who aren't really Lord of the Rings fans, because if you're a hardcore Lord of the Rings fan, I honestly think you're not gonna enjoy this movie. You'll probably find more to complain about it than not. If you're just like into fantasy or like those medieval stories, honestly, ignore that it says Lord of the Rings and just look at War of the Rohirrim. Just like, this looks like a fun movie, and honestly, I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll find it to be a fine 8 out of 10 movie. Honestly, at this point, maybe wait till it's on streaming. But either way, this was my review for the War of the Rohirrim, the Lord of the Rings anime movie. Honestly, I kind of hope they try to do maybe an anime show, like kind of like Visions, but except more of a show in Lord of the Rings stuff. Maybe try to do different stories, like maybe do the Silmarillion and stuff like that, where there's like just these little stories that they do in like quick shot anime styles. I think that would be cool. But this was my review for the War of the Rohirrim movie. Join me for many other videos of the story, be they future reviews, reactions, gameplay, and everything else to be coming out soon. Thank you all for joining me on this. I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.